Hi, Stephen from Demo Garage, and I'm here bringing you a new project today. This should be fun. I'm helping out my buddy's daughter with a Ford Transit, and she's outfitting this outfitting this van for a long trip. And let me show you the project we're going to be attempting today. So this is my buddy Jason. He's sporting the Demo Garage shirt today, and this is a quick tour of the van. It's well along in its progress. You can see it's pretty well fitted out to begin with. But the project that I'm volunteering to try and accomplish is making a trim piece that covers this area and over here this area. So I'm thinking right now of using foam core and making kind of a structure like one of those dinosaurs you used to build when you were younger, and then turning that into some sort of a mold to be covered in fiberglass, and then the final product will probably be covered in some sort of a headliner material. So let me show you what I've got planned. So here's a little bit of the method to my madness. I've pre-made some of these foam boards, and I'm going to call this one the backbone. And so my thought is I'm going to shape this one and hot glue gun it in place, and then maybe take some sort of a springboard and shape this edge to a contour that I like, and then just start filling in with the shorter pieces, contouring them together and coming up with some sort of a 3D shape that I can work with later. So let me start hot glue gunning those, shaping them, and I'll bring you back in a minute. Can you see the method to my madness yet?
A method to your madness? What is it?
Let me get a couple of more pieces in and I'll bring you back. How about now? All right, how about now? Looking pretty good. I'll have to fair in some of this, but pretty pleased with how it's looking so far. So the next step is to bust this off, take it home, and start kind of dressing it in and working on the fiberglass mold. Okay, so here's where we are. Everything's kind of a mess, and I have the form kind of popped off, and I've brought it home to work on it a bit. Pretty pleased with it. I've spent some time kind of fairing the edges and trying to get all the little individual sections lined up. So now my thought is maybe try and cover this with some tape, and then maybe try and fill these cavities with the inexpensive expanding house foam, and that'll firm stuff up. Maybe cover that in Bondo, I'm not really sure. Maybe I'll do just one bay in case it doesn't work, but maybe I just throw caution to the wind and do the whole thing. We'll see, I'll bring you back. Okay, well, I've got this thing covered in a bunch of tape. First some layers of blue, and then I didn't think that might be strong enough, so I had this crazy black tape that got too many of from a Amazon misorder. Probably been there. Anyway, the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to try and fill these cavities up with expansion foam, and then I'll try pulling the tape off, and then maybe, I don't know, start covering the foam, carving it down a bit, and then covering it in Bondo or something. Still working on making that mold, so we'll see what happens. Okay, well, it's entirely possible that I may have used a little bit too much expanding foam. You tell me. Let me try and get some of this cut away and I'll bring you back. Okay, Not so bad. I was a little nervous there. Obviously, the foam expanded out the I'll call the backside or inside, so I got to trim that back. But where it really matters, through the reinforcements there, or through the sections, it's not looking too bad. And I think I'm going to cover this in Bondo or a similar material. So let me get this cut back, and I'll bring you back when I have all the tape off. Well, there it is. It's all trimmed up, and I have to say I'm very pleased with how this project is going, since especially this is my first time trying something like this, and it's I have to say going as expected. There was very little warping of the individual cells as I allowed it to expand out the back. I have hot glued it to that board. There was a little bit of warping in the straightness of that bottom edge. So I've temporarily glued it to the board, so when I start throwing the auto Bondo on it, I'm hoping that that'll be enough to straighten it up, and I'll be able to remove it for the fiberglassing. I have not decided whether I'm just going to pull a fiberglass copy of this mold and call that a day, or whether I throw some fiberglass on this and consider that my mold, and then have layers of fiberglass inside that female mold to make the final product the male mold. So I'll be making that decision sometime soon. This is obviously the pretty edge. Don't really need to have anything special on this side, but you saw in other videos how crazy that foam expansion was, and I do have it trimmed down pretty well in the back side as well. So I'll bring you back after I get some Bondo on it. Okay, I think I'm the first person to admit that I suck at bodywork, but I'm hoping this is the last glazing to do before I primer it heavily one more time and probably do one more wet sanding on it. It's not perfect, but the final product is going to be covered in a headliner material. So I guess I'm not looking for perfect, but good enough, and I think that's about what I've achieved. I'll bring you back after it's primed and explain the next part of the mold. See you soon. Okay, well, here's the buck that I intend to make the mold from, and I have decided that I'm gonna put some fiberglass on this guy and turn that into a female mold, of which I'll use to make the actual parts, and a male version of. It has currently been waxed 3 times using this product as a mold release, but in a belt and suspenders technique. I am going to spray on this PVA mold release, maybe 3 coats of it, let it dry. Then I'm going to brush on this Total Boat gel coat, and I've got some yellow tint for that. And once that is dried, I'm going to add a couple layers of fiberglass. Done this a couple of times in my life. It's been a couple decades since the last time, and it didn't work out so well for me the first. So we'll see if I have learned anything in that time period. So I'll bring you back Maybe after I get it shot with some PVA. All right. Okay, well, my intention had been to spray this on, but it was coming out a little too thick, and for my little airbrush, it wasn't working out for me. So I've been brushing on coats of this PVA, and I'm going to put the third and final coat on now. I'm using a foam brush. It is leaving some little brush strokes, but this part is going to be covered in a headliner material, so I'm not too worried about the surface finish. Just trying to do my best to get it on thick enough, and then I come back and kind of tip it off, try and reduce the amount of brush strokes as much as possible. Trying to keep it nice and thin. All right, that's 3 thin coats of the PVA. And the next step is to brush on, I know that's going to be brushed, the gel coat, because that's even much thicker than this. So, all right, I'll bring you back. Okay, well, this is going to get exciting real fast. I'm getting ready to mix up the gel coat. And again, I've never used gel coat before. And so hopefully I've read enough to know what I'm doing. I have previously opened this container and mixed it thoroughly. It was pretty thick, so definitely recommend doing that. It was thick at the bottom. I'll try a technique here to keep the can from being too dirty afterward. Done this with paint and it works pretty good. If I make a little V with the tape, the idea is to try and pour it without making too much of a mess. A trash can handy. Okay, so I'm gonna try, I'm taking a guess here how many fluid ounces I need. I'd rather do this in one chance because this is a gel coat with wax. It's not a laminating wax. So I kind of need to have full coverage in one coat. So I'm going to go thick and not worry too much about any kind of brush strokes. So I'm going to go with a quantity of 10 ounces here, and I'm just going to fill it to the 10 ounce mark on my cup. Hopefully I'll be able to see that. And that's about 10 ounces right there. Okay. The final part I'm going to make, I figure I'll leave in the white gel coat. So I wanted a contrasting color. So I've got this yellow, and primarily yellow because it was the color I could get in time before I wanted to shoot this video. Said to add drops until the desired tint is achieved. So I got 5 or 6 drops in there. And mix this thoroughly. I'm not under the gun quite yet because I haven't added the MEK catalyst. All right, I don't know if you can see in the cup there, but still pretty pale, but I'm sure I'm gonna have a nice contrast between the pure white of the finished part. So this is probably good enough. Doesn't hurt to have it thoroughly mixed. So the total boat gel coat, the instructions say I can go 1 to 3% of catalyst depending on temperature. So I'm going to go with 2.25% by volume. And I've got this handy little calculator here. So 10 ounces is equivalent at 2.25% to 7 cc's or milliliters. And I bought this, but in the small quantities I'm talking about, this is pretty overkill. So I'm not going to bother filling this container with MEK. I'm just going to go ahead and use the small container that came with the Total Boat and squeeze it in here until I've got my 7 cc's. And that's supposed to give me 10 to 15 minutes of working time. I'm going to be applying this gel coat with a foam brush, as I don't have spray capability for this thick. All right, I think I've got everything together. I'm going to go ahead and add the catalyst and mix that in. All right, time has started now. All right, so I'm hoping that's thoroughly mixed. I'm going to reposition the camera, and then I'm going to go to town brushing it on. Okay, the foam brush. I try and get a coverage on there and then come back and fill in the gaps. Maybe it'll be thick enough to self-level a little bit. So, like I said, probably give that a couple minutes and then I'll bring you back. Okay, well, I've got it covered. Definitely lots of paint strokes in there, and I did my best to get some coverage. We're learning together, and when we get the mold off, we can see what the results indicate, and like I said, we're learning together, so you can learn from my mistakes. But yep, gel coat's on. I'm gonna stick a fan on it, give it some time to dry, and then I'm gonna start laying up some fiberglass, so I'll bring you back for that. Okay, it's ready to take the next step. The gel coat is set up about 2 hours, and I'm getting ready to mix up some fiberglass resin. I've got a couple of sheets. First is going to be a cloth, and then the second layer is going to be a mat. I don't know if that's going to be enough. I'm going to put those two on and then decide later whether I want to add additional layers before I continue. So let me go ahead and mix up some resin to apply to the fiberglass, and here's what that looks like. So, been shaking this can around a little bit, and based on the amount of gel coat that I applied, I had a lot of excess gel coat, but I think the fiberglass is going to go a lot further. So I am going to again go with the magical 10 ounce, and then let's see what I do with the hardener. Hardener, let's see, that's right at 10 ounces. And then hardener was 10 drops for each ounce. So I'm gonna open that up. So I guess I'm going for 100 drops. 1, 2, yeah, yep, that was very scientific. That was exactly 100 drops, not. So I'm gonna go ahead and mix this up. This should give me about 10 minutes of working time. I'm gonna be using a combination of application with a roller with a fine nap, and then I'm gonna pre-wet the surfaces. And again, I'm going to go with the cloth for the first layer against the gel coat, and then I'm going to go with the one layer of matte. And then I have an idea of doing some sort of a spacer or a core material or a stiffener of some kind. And then maybe one more layer of matte. I'll have to kind of judge it by feel. Get this nice and mixed together, and when I bring you back, I'll have you in front of the fiberglass to be wetted out. So let's see what happens. All right, let's wet out this first layer of cloth. This is going to be messy. See, I'm actually wearing some gloves on this attempt. Not sure I've mixed enough resin. We shall find out soon. My first thought is I'm going to be a little bit dry in the resin, but that's okay. I can mix up some more. I might have done okay. So if I bring you around to the mold, I'm gonna kind of wet this out a little bit as well. Definitely don't want to overdo the resin ratio. Got some fin rollers to help with that. Okay, so let me go ahead and lift this mat in place, or this cloth in place. The fiddly part is trying to get it to lay flat. Didn't get crazy with the ratio. The mat will conform a little better than the cloth. Hoping I didn't make a mistake choosing cloth. I just thought I'd have a little bit of better surface finish. I don't know if you've all had the experience of working with fiberglass, but it's a ton of fun. Got about 10 minutes of working time. Oh yeah, I gotta get this front. That's gonna be great. I probably could have done a better job of trimming this piece so that it fit better. Add a little more resin to my roller. I think I'm going to switch to the fin roller here in a second. I'm not really paying attention to the camera angle. I'm hoping you're able to see this, but I'm trying to work out any air bubbles I might have. Yep, sticking to everything. Probably the table as well. Yeah, I was a little afraid of this. I think I'm going to make the cardinal sin and use a pair of scissors with the resin already in there. I have to clean those scissors really well. I think maybe what I ought to do next is to go ahead and wet out my mat and squeeze that all together. Looks like I got some strands in the way. Everything's starting to be difficult. Oh, okay, so that's not strands, that's just my crazy gel coat finish. Let's see if I have any luck getting the mat wetted out. Again, I'm hoping I've mixed enough resin to wet this out, and I have a sneak. Well, that was a total shit show. Kind of glad the camera battery died the last minute as it did. Made a lot of mistakes on this. The biggest one was using the first layer of cloth. I feel like this would have turned out perfect had I just gone with the mat. The cloth did not want to conform to any of the complex shapes. I've got quite a few voids in here. I don't know if you can see this. Pretty sure that's a huge void. And then I couldn't get it to lay flat along this edge. And then I had a ton of trouble on this edge here. Now, I have extended the mold some distance around these perimeters, so that might turn out to be okay. Again, it's extended along this edge and the back edge, so it's extended out further than it needs to be. I don't know the extent of the problems. I think what I'm going to do, I've got too much into this to give up, and I can't start from scratch. I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to trim this back. I feel like those back edges are okay. I feel like that worked out okay. What I might do is I might trim this bottom edge along here and here, turn it upside down, drill some holes, and maybe try and inject some resin into what I believe to be voids, and maybe if I can fill in these problem areas, then when I go to release it from the mold, maybe I can save this thing. I mean, I guess I can always pop it off and do some work on the inside. In addition to this, before I pop it off, I am planning on putting some strengthening ribs in this, and then at least one more layer of glass so that this thing is more firm and rigid. And I have an idea how I'm going to do that. But first comes first, I'm going to trim this back and evaluate this edge and this air bubble. I don't know how good a job I did here either, but I may be doing some exploratory surgery on that. So we'll see. I'll bring you back. But learn from my mistake. Do not use the cloth as your first layer. Go right to the mat. And I feel like if I had done that, like I said, the mat would have conformed to those shapes, and I'd be a much happier camper. Anyway, let's see what happens next. Okay, I should have probably videotaped a little bit of this, but I've done some repairs. I don't know if you can see the dark color along here. I've filled, I believe I filled these voids, and I'm going to, and I did end up trimming this big air bubble back and grinding it. It was a big void, and I was able to grind it back enough, and then fill it with matte fiberglass, and that appears to be a good repair. And now my next thought is I might try and stiffen up this mold by doing some sort of a core. And I've got this crazy idea. I don't know if it's going to work, but I was thinking of hot gluing some twine in some sort of a grid pattern, and then putting one more layer of fiberglass on. And so those encapsulated rope pieces might act as spacing, or like the core would for the top layer of fiberglass. So I'm going to do it. I don't know if it's going to help. It might be a crazy idea, but I'll bring you back after I've got the after I got the rope attached. Okay, I've got that natural rope cut and hot glued to the face, and the idea is I'm going to put one more layer of mat on top of it and try and get as much contact with the other surface as possible. Again, this might be a really bad idea, but there's one way to find out if it was a bad idea or not, so we're going to do that. Okay, well, it's been a couple of days, and as you can see, I've got a layer of the fiberglass mat coated on top over the so-called stiffening ribs of the rope. I'd say ultimately I was successful. I think they are going to add some stiffening to the mold. I did think that the mat would conform a lot closer to the rope than it did. Ultimately, I don't think that's going to make a difference. I'm really only hoping to get a couple of parts off of this mold. I would say if you're planning on doing this, I would not attempt to do it in one large piece, forming it around each of the rope structure. I think I would have individual pieces that go over each rope piece. I don't know if that makes sense, but one piece, it just didn't move enough to get in close, and I wasn't going to take the time to put in fillets or radii on the rope. Like I said, I think it's going to work fine. I don't know if this is coming out well on the video, but I'm mostly pleased. I really wanted to stiffen up in the transitions from the vertical to the horizontal surface, and then around this corner on this end, and I think that's going to work. Not a thing of beauty. I think the next time I do a mold, I still have to do the other side of the van. It's going to go a lot smoother and easier, and it's been a little while since I've done any fiberglassing, so there's a little bit of experience, but I was pretty rusty. Yeah, and then this practice I was getting making the mold, I think is only going to benefit me in making the final part from this mold. So the next step is to try and detach this mold from the male buck, and I don't have the confidence to do that on camera. Sorry about that. I believe it's going to be a little bit of a hassle. I'm going to be going at it with, oh, I don't know, maybe every tool I own. But let me go ahead and try and pop this off, and I'll bring you back when I got it off, and I'll describe what tools are required and give you any tips or tricks that I develop along the way. So wish me luck. I'm going to try and pop this mold off. See you in a minute. Well, pleasantly surprised. Maybe 5 minutes later, I was pretty successful in popping the fiberglass mold shell off of the form. And here's a collection of the tools I used. I first started with the paint flat, and then a couple of flat-bladed screwdrivers, started working around the edges, and then I remembered I had a variety of shims, door shims, and so I started kind of tapping those into place on the edges. You can kind of see where they made their mark as I came in from the sides, tapping them around, and I don't know, maybe 3/4 of the way around, and bam, it popped off. So it's got a little bit of a green hue. That would be the PVA. That it's water-based, so I'm assuming I just washed that off. And the brown is obviously the primer that was from the buck, so I don't know if that stays or goes. I knew that the gel coat was really thin, and I think, I'm not sure if I'm going to, what I'm going to do with that yet. For the final part, I think I'm going to get some of the laminating gel coat and do a few layers building up that thickness, and then the final layer use the gel coat with the wax in it. But you can see I did damage the gel coat a little bit. You can see the green that needs to be washed out. That's the PVA, the mold release. Oh, look at that. So this is pretty interesting. I haven't done a mold like this before. The edges need more trimming, but I can work with this. All right, yeah, so I'm not sure. It's probably going to be a couple days before I can get back on this project, but I had some success today, so I'm pretty pleased with that. I'll report back to you soon. Okay, back again with the Ford Transit trim project, and here's the stage I'm currently at. I was able to, as I mentioned before, successfully pop the female mold off of the male plug, and I had extended some of the edges, and I experienced a little bit of damage to the thin gel coat. It probably wouldn't make a difference when I actually trimmed the actual part that I'm going to make from this mold, but I decided to go ahead and make an attempt at repairing the gel coat somewhat. I did that using the same gel coat that I had used before with wax. I mixed it with this thickening agent and some color, and it's been drying for 24 hours. You can see I've added it to some of the damaged areas. I think at this point I'm just going to sand this back, blend it in, smooth it up, and call that good. And then start thinking about laying up the release agent, the PVA, and the laminating wax this time. Get up some additional coats of gel coat material, and then so I'll use the laminating gel coat this time without wax, get some layers thickened up, and then finish that up with this stuff that does have wax so that the gel coat will actually cure. And then I'm going to go with one layer of matte fiberglass, and I think that's going to be thick enough for this trim piece. So I'll bring it back and after I've sanded back these gel coat repairs, and we'll see what it looks like. All right, back again. So the mold has been filled with thickened gel coat and repaired as much as I intend to repair it. It's pretty smooth. I'm going to clean it a final time and then start adding the wax and the PVA, and I'll go through that in a second. I did use a few thicknesses of cloth and have created a laminate, and I'm not 100% sure how I'm going to use this yet, but so I just put it under compression with a couple of smooth boards, and I'm thinking that I'm going to somehow fiberglass in here, and that'll be in contact with the van side, and maybe use some of those plastic rivets, and we'll get to that at some point. But for now, I'm going to use this female mold to make the actual male part, and that's going to start with a couple layers of this wax, followed by a few layers of this PVA, and I think this time I'm actually going to use rollers. I think rollers are probably a better way to apply it. Then I'm going to build up some thickness with this white gel coat, and this stuff does not contain wax, so that's laminating gel coat, so I can build up some thicknesses on that. And I'm going to keep it white so it's contrasting with the yellow gel coat from the mold. And then my final layer is going to be with the wax so that it will harden correctly. There's the catalyst there. And then my intention is to go one layer of thickness with the fiberglass matte, and to get myself from getting into trouble, I think it's going to be, I'll pre-trim the matte in maybe two pieces. One that follows this contour, and a second one slightly overlapping. Maybe a third one here too. That's a good idea. And I'm thinking one layer might be thick enough, but I will evaluate. maybe even pop it out of the mold, and then if I don't think it's rigid enough, maybe I can add a second layer of fiberglass to the inside of that. But yeah, so that's where I am so far, and I'll bring you back at some point. Okay, things are going pretty well. I'm much happier with the application of the PVA using the rollers. I think I've got a more uniform coating. This mold has gotten 3 coats of wax. That's supposed to help with the release. And 3 coats of PVA that I've rolled on. I've even taken some time to wax the outside edges in case there's any kind of drips of fiberglass resin over those edges. So yeah, next step is to mix up some of the gel coat without wax and start adding layers. I'm shooting for, I think, 2 to 3 without wax and then a final one with wax. But I'll bring you back when I decide if I can kind of estimate thickness that I've achieved with a couple of layers. So we'll see. Bring you back soon. All right, going well so far. I've got as I mentioned before, 3 coats of wax, a few coats of PVA. I think I did 3 of those. And I went with 2 coats rolled on of the gel coat without wax, and then I just applied a 3rd coat with wax. You can see it does, the roller does leave kind of a distinctive pattern. I'm not upset about that. I think it might actually be a little bit of a mechanical bond when I apply the fiberglass as the next step. I'm pretty pleased with the uniform thickness I was able to achieve with the 3 coats of gel coat. And next step, like I said, is to I'm going to start with a single layer of fiberglass mat, and I'll bring it back after I've got that laid up. Okay, coming back. Not exactly where I would like to have been. Yep, had a bit of a disaster. I put on that 3rd coat of gel coat, the one with wax, and I had a crazy chemical reaction. Not sure what happened, but it just peeled everything up. I let a day go by, and I basically peeled up everything, the PVA layers, the wax, allowed all of that to come out nice and clean. But I'm basically starting over, and I don't have a great idea on what I did wrong. I'm starting to lean towards, I don't think it was a chemical reaction between the gel coat without wax and the gel coat with wax, because it's the same Total Boat product. So I guess I'm leaning towards maybe I grossly over catalyzed the final coat and had a bad reaction. So I've started the first coat of PVA again, and I'm going to build this up, and then I'm going to maybe, well, I'm not sure what I'm going to do. This part is going to be covered by a headliner, so I don't really need it to be super pretty with the gel coat. Maybe I just do one heavy, thick gel coat layer and then let that set up and do the fiberglass. That's what I'm thinking at the moment. So I know I should have probably have shot some video of the chemical reaction, but I was pretty upset about it, and it started peeling out, and well, I'm bringing it back now, but starting over again, and I'll let you know what I end up doing. Okay, Steven from Demo Garage coming back. Another total failure. It's been difficult. The mold is still in good shape. You can see my most recent attempt to start with a layer of gel coat has completely failed. Still don't know what I'm doing wrong. The mold's got a couple of, now it must be, I don't know, 7 to 8 coats of this, this wax, and then following that up with kind of spraying in this PVA. And I don't know what's going on. In this attempt, I just used one thick coat of Total Boat Gel Coat White containing wax. I don't believe I over catalyzed. I just went with a thick layer, and this is the thick layer of gel coat. Dried okay. The majority of it was still attached, but in areas like this corner and some of the transitions between vertical and horizontal, it had wrinkled and pulled back. I don't know if you can see, these wrinkles were obvious and it was no longer in contact with the mold. So it pulled right out in a single piece. I had intended to just put the fiberglass layer on top of this, but kind of done with the gel coat. Not sure if it's an old can or what's going on, or if I've got a weird reaction between the wax and the PVA, or I tried doing the like a day of drying before I was going to do the fiberglass. But anyway, I've given up on the gel coat. This finished part's going to be covered by a headliner material, so it was just going to be a nice finish and trying something new, but given up again. So pulled that out. I've applied a couple more layers of the wax to the mold and shot in some more of the PVA. And now I'm going to go directly to putting in the fiberglass. And I've got a couple layers of fiberglass cut here. And I don't know if I'm going to do 2 layers or 1. I have an intention of doing a quick little layer there, and then evaluating the thickness that it is achieved from the single piece. And I may end up doing a second layer on this final product. But maybe some of you can comment on, maybe these components aren't working well together, or maybe it's an old Total Boat gel coat. I did not layer this time in multiple layers of gel coat. I'm not sure what I'm doing wrong, and maybe you can learn from my mistakes. I have no idea what's going on. But again, I've given up on using the gel coat. I'm just going to put this fiberglass right on the PVA, and I'm hoping that I can pop the finished part out of the mold. So that's what's going on. I'm going to go ahead and put some resin and catalyze it, and hopefully that'll go smoothly. And before I try pulling it out in a single layer, I will evaluate this test sample, and let me bring you back after I've got that done. All right, thanks. All right, back to materials I understand a little better. I've got a couple of decades of screwing around with fiberglass, and I don't make an ass of myself too much. This turned out pretty well. It was obvious to me that the one layer of matte wasn't going to work, so I quickly grabbed it and reinforced the intersection between the 3 walls there, and then I started cutting up. Got approximately 2 layers of the matte throughout, and then maybe even a third on some of the transition zones there. I'm very pleased how that turned out. It's wetted out pretty well. Got all the air bubbles out with the fin rollers. Had to mix epoxy maybe 3 times, no problem. Plenty of working pot life in there. And so I will let this dry. I'll probably, I don't know, I got to pop this out of the mold, and so I will probably mark on the outside of the mold where the trim lines ought to be, and that's going to be a rough estimate because I've extended the lines in the mold from the plug stage. so it needs to be trimmed back quite a bit. So I frequently find that having extra material on the edge will be easier to pop it out of the mold, but I will probably mark it with a Sharpie and trim it once it's out of the mold. But we'll see. I change my mind a lot. But the layup of the fiberglass went well. It's going to have the raw edge because I didn't make use of the gel coat, and that's fine. We'll figure it out. So I'll bring it back after I pop it out of the mold and tell you how that went. Okay, Steven back again from Demo Garage. It's the next day. It's the moment of truth to see if my fiberglass part will come out of the mold cleanly. The fiberglass appears to have set up well. It's not sticky or anything, so I'm gonna make a quick trim line with a Sharpie on this before trying to pop it out. Again, I'm hoping it pops out cleanly. So this will help me trim it to the line, even though I've extended the lines in the mold, so there's going to be additional trimming from this line. But this will give me a starting place. Okay. Looks like I've got the Sharpie line trimmed. Let's see. Oh, that's promising. Yep. Okay. Okay, all right. Looks like it might be working. Yep, I can see some separation. There we go. I ended up with at least 2 to 3 thicknesses of layer of the matting, so it still feels pretty flex. There it goes. How about that? Yeah. Pretty happy with that. Looking at it, not seeing any voids. Looks like I had pretty good surface contact through the mold. Yeah. Yeah, pretty happy with that. I'm gonna trim this and I'll be back. All right, so I've got back at the van and I've got it trimmed up pretty well. I think I'm liking how this is fitting. I did get a little heavy-handed in some areas, but I might try and repair that. That's what fiberglass is good for, but got a pretty good match along this edge. And, you know, down here, and yeah, let's see if my, there you go, the camera will cover a little bit. Might try and repair. I got a little heavy-handed in the trimming in a couple of these areas here, maybe here. I do need to kind of figure out how I'm going to attach this to the wall. And remember, this is going to be covered in a similar gray felt or headliner material, so it will hide some of the sins. But overall, I'm pretty happy with the way this is fitting, and now I'm going to try and figure out how to attach this to the wall permanently. So the idea is that it can get knocked off fairly easily if there's some airbag stuff hiding behind there. So I want this to be able to pop off. But yeah, so here's where we're at, and pretty happy at the moment. All right, bring it back later. All right, this project has progressed a little bit. I didn't take you with me, but I did go over to my buddy's place with where the van was and test fit it, and I'm very pleased with the fit on it now. I got a little crazy cutting the other day, and so I was a little short in some of these areas. I'm sure you can see But that's the great thing about fiberglass is I was able to just cut the pieces from the scraps that I had initially taken off and put another layer of glass on the inside, and it fits like a glove now. But in addition to that, I bought a little bit of this fiberglass 1-inch diameter rod, and this is how I'm going to intend to secure the trim panel on the vehicle. It's going to be in conjunction with some clips that I'm still to make, and I'm actually laying up some fiberglass flat sheet, and I'll show you that when I get to it. But there's going to be some clips down below, and I'm intending to use one of those plastic tree rivets. And so what I did was I cut a hole in a fiberglass, kind of ovaled, so this 1-inch rod fit nicely. And then I held the new trim panel in place, and I shoved the rod in such that this face of the fiberglass rod was on a flat surface. And I was able to put some chalk on it, transfer the diameter. And so I'm gonna drill a hole right in the center of this for the double-ended tree rivet, so plastic rivet. So it'll be shoved into this side, and then I've got a mark, and I drilled a hole on the actual van. So it'll be secured with that rivet. And then the plan is, so I held it in place, and then I hot glued it in place, securing it. I don't have the van here, so I was just test fitting it. So I did the hot glue to secure the rod in place. And I just got done fiberglassing this rod in. I roughed up both the inside fiberglass surface and the diameter rod. And then I cut a bunch of circles and a bunch of flat strips, and I've hopefully securely fiberglassed this rod into place. The next time I work on it, I will trim the fiberglass rod flush, get rid of all the hot glue that I used to initially secure this, and then I'll fair and whatnot so that it's not, might be visible, but it won't be to the touch. And again, this exterior surface of the trim panel will be covered in some sort of a headliner material. So I might be going to the fabric store tomorrow to try and find something that matches the van. But we're getting pretty close to finishing this project. So it'll be trimming and fairing that 1-inch rod. Finishing, I've got a center hole drilled on that, but I got to open it up to the rivet shank diameter. And then these little clips that I'll bring you back later and describe how they're going to work. But after that, it's just putting the fabric on it, and we've got a done project. So I'll bring you back. When I'm ready for the next step. Okay, coming to the final stages on this guy. I've got the fiberglass rod glassed in now. And the portion that was sticking out on this end that I had temporarily held the position with just hot glue has been trimmed flush. Probably going to prep the surface a little bit more before I attempt to glue on the headliner material. I picked some of that up. And then I'm going to finish center drilling this for the plastic tree rivets. And I still have to make the little clips on this end. So I'll probably make the little clips next. And I don't know if you can see in the mold, I went ahead, I've got this thing trimmed so well that if I make any additional ones in the future, I've transferred the trim position into the mold, so I'll be able to see that. And just in case I make another one in the future, we'll see. But the next thing to do will be to add the little clips on this edge, and that's what I'm gonna do right now. All right, I'll bring you back. All right, back at the van, and here's the big ugly hole that I'm intending to fill. You can even see the airbag situation in there, and I pulled some of the temporary insulation out that is gonna help hopefully keep Hannah warm. I guess this is the way the cargo vans are. It's got a nice headliner over the passenger and driver's seat, but yeah, for the high tops, I'm assuming this is just not a finished area. So this is, let's see if we can make this a little better. See if I can do this without making you seasick. But here's the trim piece, and it is now covered in headliner material. We tried to get as close a color as possible. A couple of shades off, but not too bad. And yes, of course, it took me 2 attempts to get it covered. First attempt was a total nightmare. I just used spray glue, and of course it got away from me and looked awful, so I ended up stripping off the first attempt, and it took me more than an hour to clean up the foam backing and all the glue, but it looks pretty good. Might have a couple of little wrinkles here and there. I'm hoping this will even out after some time, and I don't think you can see it, but I've glued on a couple of little tabs in there that catch the original trim piece, so it's going to be secured with these little pieces down at the bottom, and then I'm going to install that plastic tree rivet. It's a two-sided one, so half of it will go in here, and then half of it will go in the enlarged hole on the side wall. And I'm going to go ahead and get those rivets installed, and I'll bring you back for the hopefully final installation. All right, this is first attempt at installing this. I've got the hole enlarged, what I think is going to be pretty good for these double-ended rivets. So I got this one installed. And yeah, I haven't tried this. Hopefully everything is lined up. I'm gonna first attempt to get the little clips pushed into place. Hopefully that's finding the right spot. And I'm gonna block your view while I try and line up the hole. And I might need to get my old man glasses back. Let's try that again. Okay, I think that's going in. I think it's seated in place. Seems to be overlapping okay. Huh. What do you know? It appears to be fitting okay. Yeah. Slight color change, but seems to match okay.
Wow.
All right. So this is Stephen at Demo Garage with a successful completion to this project. And yeah, thanks for joining.